On my last few videos, I've reviewed the underwater performance of your more conventional style action cameras like the DJI Action 5 Pro and the GoPro Hero 13. However, on this video, we'll be taking a slightly less conventional approach to capturing your underwater moments by looking at Insta360's brand new 360-degree camera, the Insta360 X4. We'll not only be looking at its physical functionality, but we'll be taking this camera with us on a dive where we can look at some of its internal features such as frame rates and color profiles and even resolution, as the X4 has the ability to shoot in 8K. If you don't already know what a 360 camera is, think of one action camera that actually has two wide-angle cameras pointing in opposite directions. This enables you to capture everything from all angles without having to think too hard about what direction your camera is pointing in. In order for this to work, you're going to need to mount your camera to a selfie stick, and I'm especially excited about the Insta360 X4 because they've designed the selfie stick to be completely invisible in the final image. This creates a unique third-person perspective that feels like you have a cameraman following you around on your adventures, which of course gives you the opportunity to be featured in your own videos. This underwater test is important for 360 cameras because as soon as you take any camera underwater, the wide-angle perspective is immediately going to change due to refraction. This affects the way that the forward-facing camera and the backward-facing camera tie together in post, which is what's going to give us our final 360-degree image. I've experienced this problem with other 360 cameras that I've tried in the past where they work great above the water, but as soon as you take them below the surface, you'll see a large gap in between the area where the two images are supposed to tie together. However, this issue may be resolved because Insta360 has put in a ton of work designing this underwater dive housing. This is not only going to correct for refraction, but it's going to allow the two images to come together seamlessly to where that seam is not visible in the video. This is going to be one of the main things that I'm going to test out on this dive. In case you're wondering, with the use of the underwater housing, you'll be able to take your camera underwater to a depth of 164 feet. For full transparency, I do want to mention that I'm partnered with Insta360 on this video, and they did provide me with this camera. So to keep this from getting too biased, I just want to show you the footage and let you decide for yourself whether or not you think this camera is right for you. So enough talking, let's free this camera from the binds of its packaging. When unboxing your camera, you may have noticed that it comes with this soft carrying case. Although your camera does include removable lens covers, keep in mind that it has a camera facing in either direction and they scratch very easily, so I would recommend using this carrying case as a lens cover and keeping it covered as much as possible. Of course, this is going to be the way that your camera is going to be set up for above water use, and you actually can take it underwater down to a depth of 33 feet without the underwater housing. But as I said earlier, without the underwater case, you're just not going to have the two images aligned properly in post. Looking at the camera's physical features, you'll see that the power button is going to be on one side, and right underneath that is going to be a Q button. This is going to allow you to switch between different profiles that are each going to have their own settings. On the other side, you're going to see the battery hatch, and it does take two latches to open up this battery hatch. When it comes out, you'll also notice that the SD card goes in right to the side. Once you turn the camera on, you'll see that you have a display screen that faces in one direction. There's different functionalities available on the screen. This is all touch sensitive, but underwater, you're gonna have to have it set up to where you can cycle between these settings by using the buttons only. This is what your camera is gonna look like once it's inside its underwater housing, and there's several things that I wanna point out here. As soon as you put your camera into the dive case, you're not gonna be able to access the record button that's on the bottom of the screen. So what you're gonna do is swipe down from the top and then activate the dive case mode. This will then change the bottom button on the side to your record button, and the top button on the side will be used to cycle through your settings. Always be sure that the anti-fog strips are aligned properly in their inserts. That way we can be sure that they don't accidentally find their way in this incredibly wide 360-degree image. The next thing when installing your camera to the housing, that you're sure to align the buttons on the camera with the buttons on the housing. That way you can still control the camera's functionality while you're underwater. The last thing that I want to point out, if you're using the invisible selfie stick, be sure that it's aligned properly in a completely straight line with the camera. This will ensure that it stays entirely invisible and does not appear in the final image. And of course, I want to mention that if you do decide to purchase this camera, I have an affiliate link, and purchasing through that link will help me out quite a bit, but I only want you to do so if you feel like this camera is right for you. So with that said, we're now ready to take this camera with us into the water. Let's see how well it performs. Our first location will be in a small town in West Texas known as Balmorhea. And of course, this is home to the beautiful and pristine San Solomon Springs. It's important to remember that a camera like the Insta360 X4 is a lot like having two action cameras in one package that are shooting in all directions all the time. What this means is when you're actively engaged in your dive, you don't have to think so much about what direction your camera is pointing in. You can go back into your footage after the fact and point the frame at any subject that you wish to track, or create any sort of 360-degree perspective that you prefer. This type of editing process using keyframes can be done very easily inside of Insta360's app using the Pro mode. There's also some quick edit options and even an option to where you can allow AI to create an entire video sequence for you using all of the footage that you shot that day. The Insta360 X4 has the ability to shoot in 8K. It's only recommended to use 8K when you're in shallow water or well-lit environments. You're going to get a brighter image and much better results if you switch to 5.7K in darker environments or when you're in deeper water. Now let's take a look at the different color profiles. Everything that you've seen so far has been in the standard color profile. This is the slightly more saturated option called Vibrant. This is going to be the flat color profile. This is intended to give you much more flexibility when editing in post. Now let's change gears and move on over to the headwaters of the San Marcos River, where we're going to cover this camera's slow motion features, starting at 5.7K at 60 frames a second. Keep in mind when you're shooting at 60 frames a second, the idea is to slow your footage down by 50%. This is going to be 4K at 100 frames a second. After reviewing this footage, I want to say that Insta360 did an amazing job of hiding and blending the scene to where the two camera angles come together into the final image. Although at times you could slightly see the scene, it's very minimal, and I want to say as far as underwater use is concerned, this technology has come a long way because the older 360 cameras were not nearly this good. This is mostly due to Insta360 software alongside the design of the underwater housing. So of course it goes without saying that I really enjoyed using this camera and I couldn't recommend it more, so I encourage you to visit my affiliate link and pick one up for yourself. But as I mentioned earlier, instead of just taking my word for it, I hope that you review this footage for yourself and decide if this camera's right for you. And that's pretty much going to wrap this video up. Let me know in the comments if you have any ideas of different ways to hold or mount these cameras that'll offer a fun and unique perspective when it comes to using these things underwater. And this all goes without saying, I hope you found this video useful, and I can't wait to see you on the next dive. Thanks for watching.